Good afternoon, or good evening, everyone. This is another episode of Carolina's Weather Group. I'm meteorologist Scotty Powell with Burke Weather, and we have on Miss Cheryl Nelson tonight, natural disaster spokesperson, and a lot of other things on her list. So we will talk about that tonight. We're very excited to have her on. We're excited to have you guys on as well, watching us. I know. Just kind of cover last week. A big thank you to all the followers we had and all the viewers we had for that show. A great show, and it actually got some national recognition earlier this week from some of our buddies down at the Weather Brain. So a great show last week, and we're looking forward to another great show this week with being prepared for natural disaster, something that a lot of people may overlook in their busy day-to-day life. So hopefully after tonight's show, you'll be able to have a disaster plan ready and know what to have in your kit and know what to do the next time something like that affects you and your family. So before we get into that, I will toss it over to our panelists and let them introduce themselves and kind of talk about the wild weather that we've had here recently, where we go from the 80s to the 50s back to the 70s and all that good stuff. So I will start over to my east, where Mr. Joey Mosteller is at in Catawba County. Joey?
Thank you, Scotty. I am live on location tonight from my mother's house, by the way. Since it's a different background for me today, but yeah, my internet totally went out at the house, so I had to move over here. But anyway, weather here has just been a little up and down, I guess. I don't know. It got hot the other day, and if it's gonna get hot, it needs to storm, or I don't care, because let's be honest, fat people don't like the heat. So, but anyway, so. I wasn't too excited. Everybody else was all enjoying their 80-degree temperatures, but I wasn't. So I had my big, gigantic fan on in my room because not only do I hate the heat, I'm much more of a cheapskate than I am hating the heat. So I refused to turn on the air conditioner in March. It's not going to happen. So I had this huge fan running trying to stay cool. But anyway, that's my story. I guess as we're running around, I will let Austin, the future Taylor, step in here and introduce himself. Austin, you there?
Thank you, Mr. Joy. I'm 15 years old. They call me the future. I'm from Boys Creek in North Carolina. It was 86 degrees yesterday, and it felt like 2,000 for March, which is not normal. And today we got up to a whole 59 degrees, and it doesn't look like that's going to change very much the next few days. But I, on the other hand, like the heat, so it needs to come back sometime soon. And with that, Ricky.
Ricky, the next big thing.
I have too many nicknames. One of my viewers the other day gave me the nickname Goofy. They were like, "Who is this Goofy guy on air? What is he replacing Chris?" And so now I think that's become my new call sign or something for flying. But yeah, we're busy wrapping up things here at UNC Charlotte in terms of exams. It's every test, always comes on the same week, and then it happens to fall on the week of Charlotte Weatherfest too, which we'll plug a little bit later in the show. But it was a cooler day here than yesterday. We reached a high, I think, of 82 or 83. It was warm regardless for March, but not unprecedented warmth, at least, Scotty.
Yeah, 82 here yesterday, and we topped out around 58 today. And then tomorrow, with the cold wedge, it's looking like to be in the 30s, upper 30s, low 40s. So good old March weather in North Carolina, South Carolina, throughout the Southeast. So tonight, as we talked about, we have Miss Cheryl Nelson on. She was on several news stations, Fox News, the Weather Channel, AccuWeather. She also did a couple of stints in New York and Norfolk, Virginia at WAVY and also WSYR up in Syracuse, New York. She is the Director of Marketing and Chief Meteorologist at Storm Pins. She is also the 2014 Miss Virginia International, and we all know her as the natural disaster spokesperson for giving us all the information that we need to be prepared for natural disasters. And with that, I introduce Miss Cheryl Nelson. Cheryl, thanks so much for coming on tonight.
Scotty, thank you for a nice, warm introduction there. I'm excited to be here. It's really cool to see you guys doing your own show like this, so I'm glad that this is taking off for you, and I'm excited to talk about disaster preparedness tonight.
We are very excited to have you on, and Cheryl, we'll kind of start and talk about a little bit about your career path, where it's taken you since graduating at Penn State into what you're doing right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was one of those weather geeks, probably like a lot of you, who knew at a very young age that she wanted to be a meteorologist. When I was 9, I knew that. I was born in Connecticut, moved to Richmond when I was 9, and that's where my obsession with snow started. Back then, gosh, you'd be watching the 3 main TV station Meteorologist at 6 and 11. That was it. There wasn't all the stuff on the internet and whatnot. And I would tell all my friends, okay, I'm going to watch all 3 channels and then tell you whether or not you have to do your homework. School's going to be canceled. And it was pretty funny, and I'll say I was right about 50% of the time. But that's what really got me excited about weather. And I set out to go to Penn State and got my degree there. And as you mentioned, I've worked at several different TV stations up and down the East Coast, appeared on Fox News, CNBC, the Weather Channel, most recently Wavy TV 10 in Norfolk, and I freelance from time to time at CBS 6 in the Richmond area too. So I've done a lot of that, and now with Storm Pins, I am their chief meteorologist and marketing director, as you said. If you don't know what Storm Pins is, you should. It's a social weather app. It's free on your phone. Scotty, do you have it yet? Oh, what was that? I'm trying to download it.
It's there right now. I'm getting ready to drop my pin. So
I'm sure. But basically what Storm Pins is, you get ground truth very fast. It's a GPS-based map. Somebody can drop a pin, which is a weather damage photo, like a flooded road or a tree down, or somebody spots a funnel cloud, a snow report. Reports, photos, and 10 seconds of video, and they plot based on your GPS location on your phone. And then you see a map with all these different pins lighting up. We have several TV stations who are using this on air. CBS 6 in Richmond is one of them, probably the closest to you. And then we have WJXT in Jacksonville, Florida. They use it a lot. Even on quiet days, they'll post sunrise, sunset pictures, rainbows, what have you. But if you open up the map on Storm Pins, you will see a ton of pins. And it could be very useful during a severe weather event. For that ground truth. If a line of storms is coming through with damaging winds and you see pictures of trees down and houses damaged, then you know what that storm is capable of, and you don't have to wait for the LSR to come out from the National Weather Service. So that's me in a nutshell.
sorry, I was getting my storm app. It's right here, so we're ready to go. So Cheryl said before the show started, go ahead and tell our audience how easy it is, where you can find the Storm Pins app, and what our audience should do right now.
Yeah, so get out your smartphone, whether it be an Android or an Apple iPhone. You can get it. It's free. Type in Storm, S-T-O-R-M, Pins, P-I-N-S, all one word, and go to your App Store, type that in, and you should see it. It'll pop up, and you get it right then and there. It's free. You have to sign up, so you have to have a username and a password, and then you just start dropping pins. And in fact, just to see who is following directions on this show, I would like everybody who is watching to get Storm Pins on your phone and drop a photo pin from your location. So I want to see all kinds of different pins lighting up the map, because it's pretty cool when you actually get to look at the map and you see all the pins on there. So in fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up it on my phone right now, and I wonder if I hold it up to the computer screen if you can see what the map
It will, but it'll be the worst screen capture you've ever gotten of people's faces, because you're.
I just did a selfie.
Yeah.
Yeah? I wonder, you probably can't see that. No, it's horrible.
Oh yeah, we can see it.
Yep, we got it.
So those are some pins that are on there now. And there's a lot of them where we have TV stations. So you'll see clusters of pins in San Antonio, in Houston, Orlando, Jacksonville, also Detroit and Richmond. But we want to see pins popping up all over the map. So we'll check this again later towards the end of the show and see how many more pins are dropped. And that way you guys will know, too, how many people are watching you, right?
That's the plan.
That's the plan.
Or remember, we also do the podcast does post later, so people could who are listening post show go ahead and drop it anyway. So
yeah, we want to see that, because that way it'll get you used to using it, and it's a fun tool, and you can see pictures from your area and all around the country. So whenever there's the next hurricane, I mean, oh my goodness, if it hits Florida or Texas, those states are going to be blowing up with pins on the map, since we have so many users already in those states.
I have it now. So, Ricky, I know you had a few questions asked, so I'll let you go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, I've known Cheryl for like 2 years now. Cheryl, we met at the AMS conference.
Yeah.
In Atlanta. But before that, as you mentioned, you were on Wavy TV10 in Hampton Roads. That's kind of how I got to know you in a TV sense, at least. But that's kind of where the whole natural disaster preparedness thing started for you, in a nutshell. Because through your role as a TV meteorologist, you had to promote that disaster preparedness thing, and of course Wavy had the disaster preparedness little brochures and stuff like that. Talk a little bit about what you did as a TV meteorologist to promote disaster preparedness.
So my favorite thing that I got to do at Wavy is I actually came up with the idea with severe weather season coming, and they have tornado awareness, hurricane awareness weeks, all these different weeks by the National Weather Service. And I wanted to do something that was different for tornado awareness, because do you guys remember back in 2008, the Suffolk, Virginia tornadoes, the strong EF3 that tore homes off their foundations? Okay, that was devastating. I was on the air with Chief Meteorologist Dawn Slater for 5 straight hours that day during those tornadoes, and I've never seen anything like it in this area. So the next year really sparked my interest in preparedness and getting people the information they need to know. They have to have a kit, they need to know their risk, and they need to know really, what are they going to do? Do they have that family communicated plan? So I set out and I made this video, and basically it's me going through the motions of what to do during a tornado warning. So I say the difference between a watch and a warning, and then I physically act out where you should go if you are in your home, and also if you're driving a vehicle. I'm driving a vehicle and I pull over and I run in a ditch and dive in the ditch and do all that stuff. And my report aired actually a couple times on Wavy, and also it got me nominated for an Emmy Award, which was pretty nice to see that be recognized, and I was glad that people took it so seriously. And I love doing things like that, just a different way to educate the public, and not just the pamphlets that you give to people that they never read and they end up in the trash. I hate that. Not to mention you're wasting paper and it's littering, and it's just easier to present them with something, throw it on TV, they don't have to search for it, and then later if they want to go back and Google it, it's on the internet as well. So that was probably the most exciting thing I got to do while I was at Wavy.
That was actually my next question. Is it available like on YouTube or?
It should be.
Yeah, that's how I saw it.
It's got to be. It's still there? Okay. Good.
Well, for our viewers, anybody's watching, I'll get that posted up on our Carolina Weather Group Facebook page as soon as we get off the air.
Oh, thank you.
And Cheryl, I think that's an important thing to mention, though, because you mentioned the visual side. People are able to see it. When it comes to disaster preparedness, we want to include all entities, and we've been trying to do that with Charlotte Weatherfest, too, reaching out to individuals who have disabilities or maybe blind, hearing aid. When it comes to disaster preparedness, how can we reach out to those type of people?
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because I did a lot of that as Mrs. Virginia International 2014. My platform, as you said, was natural disaster preparedness, and I actually reached out to people, the homeless, through the Salvation Army, for example, and they have these dinners. This was in Richmond, where they give homeless people free meals every night, and they come, they don't stay too long, but they actually let me come in there and give a presentation to them. And it was really eye-opening to see these people and what they say and how they prepare, and a lot of them didn't even know what to do if a storm was coming. They said they wouldn't know unless they heard it by word of mouth, just from other people on the streets. And I asked them what the #1 thing is that they would need, and they said warm socks, which was kind of interesting to me, that just the necessities that we have and probably take for granted, something like socks is what these homeless people really want. And during disasters, it's just interesting, because there's the homeless people, you have the pets and the animals you have to think about, you have people with special needs, and there's so many different avenues and ways to address this. And I talked to several different groups, the Red Cross as well, and also a center called the Independent Center, and they deal with these people with special needs, and a lot of it has to be coordinated by the county or city emergency management offices, and these people just need to know where to go. A lot of these counties have registries or lists that you can sign up for if you need oxygen, for example. And we just have to get this information out to the public so they can empower themselves with that knowledge and know who to turn to before that next disaster strikes. And then there's people too, you have these vulnerable populations say in New Orleans with Hurricane Katrina. I mean, oh my goodness, people didn't evacuate because they didn't have the means to evacuate, and they didn't know maybe where the bus was going to be to take them out of town. So it's getting this information, and with them, they may not have access to the things that we do. Maybe they don't have cell phones or have TVs or computers, and maybe you have to distribute this kind of information to them via snail mail, so they get it and they actually can keep it for that next disaster, so they know where to go. So many different things to consider, and it's a global problem.
And you know, across the South, we've seen this demographic to where different types of populations, and I'll shut my door because it's getting loud, different types of populations in terms of different ethnicities and people who speak Spanish, people who speak different languages, that creates a whole other barrier itself, correct?
Oh my goodness, yes. The Spanish speaking, especially people who don't speak English, and you run into that a lot with the hurricane zones. I mean, Florida and Texas are prime examples, and I know that ready.gov has pamphlets in Spanish, and so there is this information available, but again, it's all about the distribution. How do you get it to these people? And I know the Red Cross, Salvation Army does a lot of that, but we really need local emergency management offices to step up even more than they already are to address those types of problems.
I know here locally in Charlotte, we work with the city of Charlotte in terms of some of the emergency preparedness stuff they do for the Panthers games, but they've told me that they're starting to do that. They're making pamphlets in Spanish. They're working with the state government translator's office to translate those pamphlets. But from the preparedness standpoint, when it comes down to when the storm strikes, how can we get information to people during the storm, after the storm, in that kind of atmosphere?
I'm an advocate for a NOAA weather radio. Mm-hmm. I know in this day and age, a lot of people say, oh, I've got a cell phone, I don't need that. Well, you know what? Guess what? During a power outage, during a storm, maybe you didn't charge your phone. Maybe you can't charge it. Or maybe you don't have a signal. Your Wi-Fi might go down. Then what? How are you going to get that information? So a NOAA weather radio, I still believe, is crucial for everyone to have in their homes. And even people say who have those disabilities and they can't see or they can't hear, there's different things that you can do with these types of radios. There are options available too. But that's number one. Of course, AM, FM radio is number two. You got to go back to the old-fashioned way to get the information. You might be able to get it on TV, or you might not if you lose power and don't have access to that. So radio actually is going to be key.
So let's break it down. You've got a plan in place. You know what you're supposed to do, but for a lot of people, it's the financial struggle of getting prepared.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about what you would tell people who are like, I don't want to spend the money on hurricane preparedness or being prepared for this because it rarely ever happens. And then we'll talk a little bit about maybe a basic emergency kit.
Yeah, and that's so true. Here's an example. When I was Mrs. Virginia last year, I was on the boardwalk in Virginia Beach, and I was eating at a nice restaurant, and I asked the owner, I said, hey, there are a lot of windows here facing the Atlantic Ocean. What do you guys do to prepare for a hurricane? Do you have a plan? How do you protect your building? He goes, oh, I'm not worried about that. Anytime anything ever comes here, it's just a tropical storm. And just that mindset, because it hasn't happened in a long time, people forget. And until it happens again, they get that wake-up call, then they'll prepare. But that's what really bugs me, because it shouldn't take that wake-up call for people to start preparing. And the financial thing, that's certainly something that you hear. I mean, money is tight for everyone these days. But then you have to think, where are you spending that money? Is it for things that maybe you don't need? Maybe you didn't need that Big Mac at McDonald's, or the pack of cigarettes, or the case of beer. Maybe you didn't need to splurge for a manicure. I mean, just things that people can do and say, okay, well, maybe this week I won't do that, but I'll buy a flashlight and batteries instead. So I like to have a plan. In fact, a monthly calendar is a great way to do it. You can take 12 months to prepare. If you can't afford everything now, have something that you want to buy each month. Set it out. And then that month, okay, this is how much I need to buy this item. So you can eventually have the basic items for your disaster preparedness kit.
And talking about that kit, let's go down from maybe a very basic kit. The exact necessities everyone should have, I should have in my room right now. What would those things be?
Okay. And actually, I keep one of these in my car as well. I have one in my car and in my house. And what you need, necessities, the basics. You want water, at least 1 gallon per person for 3 to 5 days. If that's a little much, at least 3 days. 1 gallon of water per person. You want to have non-perishable foods, things that you can have, granola bars, canned goods, just things that you can save for a while, and put everything in a box or a backpack. That's what I do. I've got everything in a backpack, and I keep it behind one of my couches. It's by the door. I know where I need it. If there's a tornado warning, I can grab that and bring it into the bathroom with me as well, because you have everything right there. So food, water, flashlight, and batteries. NOAA weather radio, AM/FM radio. I've got one that actually is a combination of both, and it's a crank one, which is great as well. So you don't have to worry about if the batteries die or plugging it in, which is good. It has the flashlight built in too. There's so many different things. I mean, medication is a necessity. They say at least 2 weeks of medication, which I know is a lot for some people. You want to have your important documents, your license, your insurance documents, your bank documents, credit cards, everything that you would need. Let's say if, God forbid, your house is destroyed and you can't get anything. You want to be able to prove identification of who you are. You want to have items for your pets as well. A picture of you and your pet together to prove ownership if you're ever separated during a disaster. Of course, microchipping your pet is also something that I recommend as well. Gosh, sanitary items, that would be something else that you should have. And I could just go on and on with these basic items, but I mean, those are just some of the few in a nutshell. Blanket, sturdy shoes, but I think you guys get the idea.
And of course, that kind of covers the basis of every emergency. But for people like me and you who live in hurricane-prone areas, or other people who live in more winter weather-prone areas, the items will vary a little bit depending on the zone. So what would you say, let's start with hurricanes first, for our coastal friends and probably the majority of people who watch this show who live on the coast. What things should they have extra from what you just mentioned?
For hurricanes, one thing people don't think of is bug repellent. And if you're without power, your windows are going to be open so you can breathe. And guess what? There are going to be bugs everywhere, mosquitoes, and you don't want any of that. So bug repellent is going to be huge. Sunscreen is also huge because you're going to be outside fixing things. You need tarps in case your roof is destroyed or blown off. And sturdy shoes is very important too, because if you're walking around in rubble, you don't want to just have your flip-flops.
I'll throw in one thing that saved us more of a peace of mind thing after Isabel was an extra tank of propane for the grill, because you've got so much food in your freezer that's going bad, and you never know how nice it is to eat a little bit of a warm meal after a hurricane compared to that cheese and crackers or peanut butter and jelly for the 3rd day in a row.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that is true.
And then for winter people, well, what about a winter weather kit for your car? We're getting out of winter season, but for a lot of people like Atlanta or going back to Tuscaloosa or was it Kentucky a few weeks ago, guys? We had the same situation where people were stranded in their cars.
Oh, it was horrible. I know, and so that's why I always keep a kit in the trunk of my car. And again, you need food and water. That's number one, because if you're stranded for 12, 24 hours on the highway, you're going to be hungry. You're going to need something for energy. So make sure you have that. Keep a blanket in your car. Hand warmers is something people might not think of. Hand warmers are something good to have too, because you're not going to be able to run your car for that long without getting carbon monoxide poisoning or running out of gas. So you don't want to do that. Flashlight, batteries. You want to have a shovel. You want to have some kitty litter or some sand in case you get stuck in the snow. An ice scraper, an ice brush. So many times people, and you've seen this happen, where people go to work at 8 o'clock in the morning, they come out at 5 in the afternoon, they realize, oh my God, it snowed, and my car is, I can't get to it. I don't have a shovel or an ice scraper or a snow brush. So that's something that you always want to keep in your car too. Those are the necessities. Cell phone charger, keep that in your car so you can plug in your cell phone, because if you don't have a charger in there and you're stuck for 12 to 24 hours, we all know how quickly those batteries die. Something else you'll need.
Throwing random things I found over the years too, and I've been a big fan of these little micro USB power packs.
Ooh.
You can throw them. They make this one, which is like what is it? 1300 mega amps. You can throw that in there, and then you can throw a few other things. But they make solar-powered ones. I will caution anyone in the solar-power variety. I found over the years solar isn't the thing it's all made out to be every once in a while. So be careful what you buy with solar. But,
yeah, I can see that, especially if it's nighttime, then you're out of luck.
Yeah, but power packs are great, for people, especially the meteorology people who want to keep their cell phone powered after the storm or during the storm. Have one of these, and then you continue to run your cell phone off that.
How long does that last, the power from that?
This one will charge my phone like 5 times, but they make huge ones that will charge your laptop. I found one on the internet that's like $80. They can actually jumpstart your car.
I need to get myself one of those.
Yeah.
Well, if anybody wants to make a gift to me, I am taking gifts now.
No, I love these things. I wouldn't go out. And then they actually make solar panel ones that actually charge your cell phones. Like, I found the small ones don't really do so well, but the bigger solar panels will. It's all in the amps that it puts out because the cell phone has to get a certain amount of amps to it from the charger. And so if you have, like, if you go to the Walmart or wherever, Walgreens, buy one of those really, I have one. Somewhere. Well, anyway, buy one of the smaller, like ones that are like the lipstick kind of power plug ones for your phone.
Yeah. I've got one of those.
Those don't seem to work as well because the phone actually draws more power off of it than the little device is putting out. So you got to be careful with those sometimes. But
listen to you, Mr. Techie. I love it.
I'm taking your topic away from you a little bit, but
no, this is good though. This is good. Even I have something to learn. See, this techie stuff is good.
And that's one thing, Cheryl, we should probably mention is everyone has different ideas for disaster preparedness. Your neighbor may have a better idea than you do. And so it comes down to community interaction, community involvement, asking your community, what their plan is, especially if you live in one of these housing developments or something like that. Talk a little bit about, the whole community mindset of disaster preparedness.
So everybody has to take their own responsibility, first of all. You can't just say, oh, I live next to Cheryl Nelson. She's got disaster kits out the wazoo. I don't need to plan anything. I'll just go to her house. No. You don't want to do that because if Cheryl's not home, you can't get in. And you have to all have your own kit. Take responsibility for yourself and your family. I mean, think about it. What if you were at work and your kids are at home and something happened and you can't get home to them? You want them to know what to do, how to reach you. Do they have phone numbers memorized of neighbors or relatives or written down somewhere? If their cell phone doesn't work or if they get separated from their cell phone, how are they going to contact anybody? Or if the phones aren't even up? Think about that. Do you have a family or neighborhood meeting place? If a tornado comes and wipes out parts of your neighborhood, where would everybody meet? Because things might not be recognizable after a tornado. Trees are going to be gone, houses gone. It's just a big pile of debris. So you have to say, okay, I'm going to meet in the center of the cul-de-sac. You might be able to see where that is. But have that place designated so everybody knows where to go. And then know what you're going to do, too. If you're out of town, tell your neighbors. Say, hey, look, if anything happens, keep an eye on the house. I've got pets inside. Please make sure they're okay if there's ever a disaster. It's all about communicating with your neighbors, and they have to communicate with you as well so you can all help each other because that's also what happens after a disaster.
And let's mention the pets. I mean, because pets need a kit too. That for a lot of people, that's their family is their dog or their cat or something like that.
That's like me. I'm a cat person. I've got 3 cats, and I have a kit for each cat. And you want to have the food, the identification documents, the vaccination records. If you ever need to go to a shelter, they won't let your pet in unless they know, in most cases, that your pet's been vaccinated for rabies. So you have to have that in your kit. Medications if your pets need that, blankets, carriers for each pet, toys to keep them at least somewhat feeling okay because everybody's going to be anxious in a disaster. A leash, harness if you have dogs. You have to have items for every pet, and that is a carrier or some kind of cage for every animal because if your house is gone, you're not going to be able to hold on to all your animals. You got to be able to put them somewhere.
And we've seen over the years recently that a lot more shelters are becoming a lot more accepting of pets, especially in hurricane shelters and stuff like that. But how can people find out information if their shelter is pet friendly?
Well, they can basically call the local authorities, and a lot of these shelters aren't designated until right before the storm. So that's what makes it difficult to find out in advance because there might be 10 shelters, quote unquote, in your area, but maybe only 5 plan to open. during a disaster. So you have to find that out. And unfortunately, it's not something that's really well listed because everything changes due to the nature of each disaster. But it's why it's so important to stay tuned to local media, radio, television, and your emergency management offices in the days before a disaster, if it's a hurricane or a major snowstorm, ice storm. In a tornado, I mean, that's going to be tough because obviously those shelters, you're not going to have them set up. But call your emergency management office and just say, hey, look, where are the typical shelter locations? So at least you know that much. And the American Red Cross can help too, and they'll put out information after disasters as well as to where to go.
And I believe Joey has a question.
Yeah, I was actually going to tell you something, and maybe you have an idea, because I ran into this problem and I had no idea what to tell the people. But back in 2011, I was working part-time at a call center for AT&T, and I will go ahead and tell you it was AT&T because when the story comes out, they should be credited for what they did during those tornadoes, disasters. But right after the Tuscaloosa, Alabama tornado, I got a call from a man in Coleman, Alabama, which y'all know took a direct hit from F5 that day, and he was calling for his parents, and he said, I'm calling for them because they've lost their cell phones in the tornado. His exact words, I'll never forget it because it actually gave me coaches. He was like, if we could find the house, maybe I could find the cell phones. And it was that bad. The house was, they couldn't even find the house anymore. They lived in a mobile home. The mobile home actually, he said the mobile home completely removed and left them laying where the mobile home was. But luckily, they wasn't injured too bad. But anyway, long story short, first off, AT&T let us know as soon as those calls started coming in that we were to do everything possible up to giving anybody who was affected by the storm a free phone. No questions asked. Just go ahead and it doesn't matter if they just upgraded their phone a month before, we were to go ahead and give them a new upgrade. Send them out a phone automatically. But anyway, which was a really good thing. But here's where the problem came in. He said, I said, we've been told do the upgrades, we can get you new phones. Then he was like, but hold on, where are you going to mail them to? And I mean, it was a serious question. There's no mailbox, I mean, there's nothing there. Who knows how long it was going to take to get there? And to be honest, that's a question I don't even know the answer to. I don't know if you've ever run into. Do you have any idea?
Yeah, I would say actually work with the Red Cross because they have shelters and centers set up, and that's somewhere that they could go to distribute those items.
There's a good answer. Like I said, I was on the phone with him. I honestly had no idea because my first thought was, well, I said, chances are if they can't deliver to the house, they hold it at the post office. He was like, well, that's not here anymore either.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
That was kind of the problem we ran into. But luckily, we sent it to the post office, and hopefully things worked out. I don't know. Like I said, it was a call center. I don't know what happened after that. But shout out to AT&T, by the way. If you ever run into that problem, call your cell phone provider because they were wonderful with making sure everybody got new phones. So
that's amazing. And the other thing too, the Salvation Army, if they have stations or distribution centers set up where they're giving food, I mean, that would be another one. But those charitable organizations, they always have something set up somewhere, which is why it's so important to have an AM/FM radio with batteries or a charger so you know where these centers are and how to get the items you need.
Cheryl, speaking of that, you were talking about tornadoes and stuff. One thing that we've seen a lot more often, especially in the more metropolitan areas, is people are caught out on the road when tornadoes and stuff happen. It's hard to say this is what you do, this is where you go. What is your best advice for those people who may be caught out on the road, on interstate or anything like that? Where should they seek shelter at, and where are places they should not?
Well, first of all, to start off the day, make sure you know if this is a day where you might have severe weather. Do you watch the weather, listen to the forecast in the morning? Most of us will hear it or see it somewhere before heading out. So just be aware of what's going on. And then if you have to hit the road, maybe check the weather, check the radar, see what's going on. If you have to be out there, I know a lot of jobs require travel on the road 24/7, and you get a tornado warning. Hopefully your radio is on or your cell phone goes off and you get that warning. Basically what you want to do is get to the shelter as soon as possible. So if there's a building, if there's a store nearby, pull over, park, go inside, and get in that building's interior room. If there is no shelter nearby, and mobile homes don't count, mobile homes do not count as shelter, If there is nowhere you can go, and you see things looking really nasty, you know this tornado's coming, the wind's picking up, the sky goes black, green, what have you, then the safest thing to do is to get out of your car, run away from it, lie flat in a ditch, cover your head with your arms, and stay anywhere where there might be some flying debris. So obviously you don't want to get in a ditch right next to a big tree, for example. But you want to make yourself as low to the ground as possible, because hopefully that tornado won't touch you. Maybe it'll go just above you. If you're in that car, you're going to be a lot higher off the ground, and it's a lot easier for a tornado to actually pick up that vehicle and toss it like a toy. And we've seen that happen so many times. So I know it's scary, and it might be the lesser of two evils, but that is the recommendation.
Yeah, that's always a hard thing. You know, there's really no safe place if you're out on the road traveling. But I can say this, and I hope, and I think you'll agree: standing under the bridge, under the little the area up there, that is not the place to go.
No, we've seen that in movies, the overpasses. You don't want to hide under there because, as you guys know, that's just going to act as a funnel for that wind to funnel through, pick you up, and take you out. You don't want to do that.
And anybody who challenges that theory, I dare you to go on YouTube, find me a video of somebody who got hit by a tornado while under that bridge. There's videos of people hiding under the bridge that made it. But you've never seen anyone actually get hit by the tornado. And there's a reason for that, I'm sure.
Interesting.
Cheryl, since we're talking, all types of natural disasters, let's go away from weather for a minute and talk about the earthquakes and tsunami threats that are posed to some of our areas. We had the big Virginia earthquake, what was it, 2011? 3 days before Hurricane Irene hit as a coincidence. But that is a risk that a lot of people face in the United States, is that earthquake risk, and then on the coast, the tsunami risk.
Oh, yeah, exactly. So earthquakes, I mean, as we know now, we're vulnerable even on the East Coast. Not going to be like we see out west just because of the type of soil that we have out here. However, we are still prone to earthquakes. So whether you're in California or on the East Coast, earthquakes are a risk. And I would keep that disaster kit ready for an earthquake. The same kit that you might have for a tornado, keep that also for your earthquake as well. Keep it where it's easily accessible so you can run and get it. And for an earthquake, where do you want to go? You want to go under something sturdy, like a table, and stay there. Do not run outside. For some reason, people think when everything starts shaking, oh my gosh, I got to get out of here, I got to go outside. You don't want to do that because you might have pieces of your roof falling off. As soon as you get out the front door, you're going to get hit. Trees, branches, much safer to stay inside under something sturdy if there is an earthquake. And as far as tsunamis, out west, Hawaii, yes, they're more vulnerable to them than here. However, I did a project, I remember it was back in college, about the tsunami risk for Virginia Beach. And it could happen. If you get an earthquake under the ocean floor in the right spot, the right magnitude, you could get tsunami waves coming into parts of the East Coast as well. It's rare, knock on wood, but it's a threat that's out there. And one of those things where it could happen tomorrow, as we see on TV shows.
That's always been the most terrifying thing I'm able to tell my friends who are like, what threats do we face here? I was like, well, we could have a tsunami one day that devastates all of Hampton Roads and wipes it out. But knock on wood, that never happens. But
it's scary, though. I've had nightmares. Anybody else have nightmares about tsunamis?
I've had nightmares about tornadoes, not tsunamis yet. But,
really?
I got to go to sleep tonight, so.
Yeah, I'm on this bridge driving, and all of a sudden tsunami waves are coming. That's what happens in my dreams. But
are those tornado dreams really nightmares, though? I always enjoy them.
I mean, depends.
Weather nerd.
Yeah, that was. I know. I don't want to see a tornado in my dream. That's okay. That's okay.
Sort of off topic for a minute. In Hampton Roads, we've been, what's the word I'm looking for? Stranger to tornadoes, and especially some across Isle of Wight and Southampton, and then up at Gloucester back in 2011. First off, on a personal note, how close have you been to some of those at Isle of Wight? And then talk a little bit about some of the stronger ones we've had in Hampton Roads, and especially that one we had last year on the Eastern Shore over at Cherrystone.
Yes.
And what people can do when they're outside, in like a campground or something.
Oh my gosh, I hate that. I know. So the tornado in Isle of Wight, I live about 10 miles from there, and I was at work when it happened, so I wasn't home. But I remember looking at the radar, going, "Oh my goodness, it's close to my house. It's kind of scary." But yeah, I mean, I've seen several here in Hampton Roads. Never actually witnessed one because usually I was working or I was on the air. But the Eastern Shore last year, as you mentioned, I mean, that's something that's really scary. People, whether they are out camping or they're out on a golf course, and maybe there is no shelter that's nearby. I mean, gosh, for a campground, for example, that's just one of those things. If you're way out in the woods, you just have to stay abreast of what's going to happen as far as the weather goes. Know your severe weather risk for that day, and that's going to be a call. I'm not sure who makes the call, maybe the troop leader, but that's going to be a call that that person has to make before they go out on that trip, whether it be for just a few hours or a day or a week. Look at the weather forecast and just see if thunderstorms are in the forecast, and if they are and you still want to go out there, is there a shelter somewhere nearby? Is there somewhere you could go? If you're out there, make sure you have a radio or somewhere how you can get that information. If there is a tornado watch issued that day, which doesn't always happen before a warning, but we like it to happen before a warning, and if there is a watch issued, get everybody inside to shelter. Don't even risk it. Don't even play around. It's getting that information and knowing what to do with it and then making decisions based on that.
For a little background for people who aren't too familiar with what we're talking about, Cheryl and I know it was last year. Cherry Stone Campground on the Eastern Shore was hit by an EF1 tornado. It was around 9:30 in the morning, so first off, people weren't expecting a storm that time in the morning. Second, it was in a campground on the Eastern Shore, which, if you've ever been in the Eastern Shore of Virginia, is a pretty empty space. There's not a whole lot over there except for some campgrounds and some nature preserves. But the storm formed over the Chesapeake Bay and then came ashore. It was a tornadic waterspout, though, not the typical waterspouts we see across Chesapeake Bay a lot of the times of the year where they're just really weak. EF0s basically weaken as they come ashore. This was one of the stronger ones. And Cherry Stone Campground sits kind of in a wooded area. And so the trees fell onto a lot of the campers around there. Mm-hmm. And it was a bad situation with 3 people killed and I think 50 or so injured or something like that.
It's just awful. Yeah, it's awful to see that. And I think something else that maybe to consider when you are out there, because it's a highly wooded area and those trees, I mean, we know what they're capable of doing, but is there some kind of shelter? And you said they were campers, but maybe it's even having something, I don't know, you can't really have a mobile tornado shelter, but something sturdy that you could have out there as a part of that camper, just in case, for those types of scenarios. I mean, it might be a lot of money that would have to go into something like that, but you have to address everything. And I think, again, people don't think about it until it happens, and then they go, oh, gosh, it's that wake-up call I was talking about.
In that case, minus the whole threat of falling trees and trees crushing things, it's almost one of those scenarios where being in your car is safer than being in a camper or something like that. You kind of have to do the risk versus reward thing. What would your options be? Mm-hmm. Would you, I would say probably like the first option is like a concrete bathroom nearby, with the second one probably being a car or vehicle?
It's up to the person to make that decision in that moment. Because personally, I cannot tell somebody, you need to do this over this. But if you're looking around and you see nothing but trees, and if you lay down flat on the ground, stuff is going to fall on you. At that point, you have to make your own decision to say, I have a better chance of surviving if I go inside this vehicle. But that's something that every person has to decide in that moment.
Yeah. So let's switch it one last time here as we're getting close now. I talk about 15 minutes left and talk about the insurance kind of portion of emergency preparedness. Let's mention flood insurance. And a lot of people don't really understand the difference between flood insurance and homeowners insurance and why you need a different policy.
Oh my goodness, I'm glad you brought that up, because so many people, they don't think they need flood insurance. For example, I don't technically live in a flood zone, yet I purchase flood insurance every year, because you never know. If that's the year that you have a hurricane and it sits on top of Hampton Roads and dumps 20 inches of rain, guess what? There's going to be some flooding. So yes, I buy that, but you also have to know that when you want to get flood insurance, it's not part of your homeowners, it's something completely separate, And if you see a hurricane out there in the Atlantic and you're going, oh gosh, this might hit me in a week or so, I better buy that flood insurance. Too late. There is at least a 30-day waiting period before that flood insurance becomes active. So if you get it 7 days later, hurricane hits, your house is flooded, you are out of luck because you did not follow those directions. You got to have it for 30 days, and then you can file a claim.
And one thing I've done over the years too, Cheryl, is in terms of like property, you know, how do people go and prove what they own, what they had? What I've done is gone and taken pictures around all the rooms in my house. What are some other things that people can do to, you know, document your items, stuff like that? Pictures,
video, make a list. And what I like to do is get all of that and put it on a flash drive, and then put that flash drive in your emergency preparedness kit. That way you have everything, you have proof of ownership, and you can also leave a copy of everything with a person you trust as well. Leave it at their house. So if your house is destroyed, they still have evidence of everything that you owned as well. So I think you're doing the right thing. Take pictures, video, and inventory everything you have in your home.
And Joey has a question. Joey, I want you to also comment on something too. What was it? 3 or 4 years ago, there was the big floods in your county. How many people were caught off guard by that, you know, severity of the flood?
Put it this way: I've lived in the same area for 34 years of my life, and there were water in places I've never seen it. There was water in places that I never even knew that there was any kind of creek or anything even in that area. What happened was we received about 13 inches of rain in a 12-hour period.
Wow.
Yeah, or well, it really is about a 6-hour period. I mean, we probably received 11 or 12 inches of that in a 6-hour period. But yeah, it caused. Like I said, it caused. Obviously, we lost a lot of bridges and things like that. You know, the areas that, you know, small creeks that never flood, but of course they did. But the areas where there was water that like I said, I didn't even know there was a creek there. And I promise you, I know those people didn't have any flood insurance. There's no way they would have never even thought about it.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing I was going to say about the flood insurance, and this happened to my grandparents' house. We had a heavy rain one day. Oddly enough, the really heavy rain that caused that time didn't flood it. Weird. But anyway, we had a really heavy rain a few years before that actually caused the sewer to back up through the bathroom. You know, it come back up, like say, through the toilet and through all that, and that's not covered in homeowners insurance. That's a flood issue.
Mm-hmm.
But really, I mean, it wasn't like a creek or anything. That could happen anywhere. I mean, we live on top of a hill. We would never flood. I promise you, there would never be a flood in that house. But there was something that wasn't covered by homeowners. We had to have flood coverage to cover that because it was caused by a heavy rain.
Wow. Isn't that interesting? And that's a good point you make, too, about that. I've seen sewage. Tidal flooding is a big issue in Hampton Roads and many parts of the East Coast and along rivers. And you get those tides coming in. We see a lot of that with nor'easters. And there was this one, event. It was November of 2009. I was at Wavy TV, and we call it Lake Wavy, where we had 2 feet of water that came up through the drains surrounding Wavy TV completely, making us an island. And inside that water was sewage and maggots and all kinds of disgusting things. And just that type of thing that you see, oh my goodness, it can happen. And like you said, even in a place that you don't think is going to flood, well, you don't know what's going to happen with the sewage.
Very good points, and I remember that storm very vividly because it was one of the probably one of the worst storms, if not worse than some of the hurricanes we've had in years.
And that's what's amazing. These nor'easters can pack just as bad of a punch, even worse.
Guys, you actually need to go back and look at that because I got to send you some videos and stuff. But the city of Norfolk was underwater for like 2 days straight through that nor'easter. And that's a different share we should mention with nor'easters too versus hurricanes in terms of preparedness is in nor'easters the water really doesn't recede a whole lot. With hurricanes we have that surge, you know.
Right.
With the nor'easters, it kind of just stays up. You're flooded for what, 2 or 3 days as we saw.
That's a good point. Yeah, because you have that persistent wind coming in out of the northeast, and with the tidal cycles, you might go from 2 feet and then maybe down to 1 and then back up to 2, and until that storm gets away and the winds shift direction, it is that constant surge of tides and flooding. That's a good point, Ricky.
So one last question from me, and then we'll throw to the rest of the panel, see if they have any final thoughts as we close up. What's the strangest plan that someone's ever told you they had in place?
Okay, so I actually made one of those Jay Leno style man on the street videos. I don't know if you've seen it or not. And I went out and asked people in my town at one of their farmers markets different questions about preparedness, just to see what they knew. And I asked somebody, hey, so what do you have in your disaster preparedness kit? Do you have one? And he goes, disaster preparedness kit? Yeah, a gun and bullets. I'm like, that's great. So that was probably the weirdest answer that I've ever gotten for what somebody has in their kits.
He was ready for the zombies to attack.
Here in North Carolina.
Yes. Zombie apocalypse, that's right.
I guess one thing, and I was having a little bit of audio and internet thing. One thing that a lot of people forget with safety or with their preparedness kits are can openers. I mean, that's a big thing that you must have for your kits. But anyways, my question was, we didn't really get to talk about it much, so I was going to ask you right now. Tell us a little bit about Miss Virginia, how that came along, and your journey with that.
Oh, yeah, thank you. So I have actually done pageants for 10 years, and I enjoy them. I think, like a lot of girls, I like the girly aspect of it, but I also like the voice that it gives me. And that was the most really rewarding part about winning Mrs. Virginia International last year, because I became an international spokesperson for natural disaster preparedness. And it allowed me so many opportunities to speak up and raise awareness about that. And I made over 100 appearances in Virginia, across the country, and even in Canada. I spoke at the World Weather Open Science Conference. And just getting out some of this information to people who think that, oh yeah, I'm prepared if there's a disaster. And they really aren't, and they don't realize it until you start asking them questions and telling you these things. And that's when they go, oh my goodness, I need to take action. And so I think that was the best thing that I got to do as Mrs. Virginia, is just reaching so many different types of people from different parts of the country in all walks of life.
Well, we're appreciative of it. Anybody in the weather community who can get out there and spread a lot about our industry and the importance of being prepared for natural disasters. We're very appreciative that you were able to do that, and you know, even if it just affected one person, that's one person that that was safe during a weather event. So we appreciate the voice that you gave us all.
Thank you. It could save a life, and that's one thing that somebody always has to realize. Even if it's not your life, it might be the life of someone you love. So getting that word out is certainly very important.
Very much so. As Ricky was saying, we're closing in on 9 o'clock. So Joey, do you guys have anything else as we kind of close up the program?
Yeah, actually, I have two things. The first thing I want to mention that I didn't hear us mention is something that I tell, especially well, I mean, really, it goes for anybody. As long as you know it's coming a little bit ahead of time. I always tell people to have a relative or a friend who doesn't live anywhere near them, maybe in another state even, that whenever, like a tornado or on a day you know that there's going to be bad weather, call them and say, listen, I'm going to check in with you at this time. 8 o'clock, I'm calling you. And that way, that person knows that if your area is hit, they don't get that phone call. Now we know that we actually have a person that might be missing. I mean, obviously, sometimes it'll happen because you don't have phone service or whatever, but at least we know. More importantly, if you are able to make that phone call, we know that that person is not missing, and that person is accounted for. And that's something I tell people to make sure you do a lot of times. So that way you just have somebody you can check in with who doesn't live near you, lives somewhere in another area. And then if that person doesn't receive a phone call from you, then they can call the authorities in your area and say, hey, they were supposed to check in, didn't hear from them. So, you know, that might be somebody that's possibly missing.
I love that. That's a very good point. And in addition to that, if the cell phones don't work and they're trying to get a hold of that loved one to tell them they're okay, the Red Cross, where they set up these centers for people to go to, they also have a program called Safe and Well. And it's basically a database, a website that you can log into at their facility where they have everything set up and say that you are safe and well, and then your relatives can look you up on there, and they can also find out you're safe that way too.
And my other question is, me and Scotty, we do a lot of school presentations. Hello, anybody watching from Blackburn Elementary and Shuford Elementary, right, Scotty, Friday? I think that's right.
Aw.
That's
Blackburn
correct.
and Shuford, we'll be going there. But one thing we always do is we always take a part of our presentation to go over tornado safety with the kids. I know they have their day that they practice it, but we always go over it again. And we also try to let the teachers know that it would be a good idea to grab a heavy book to put over your head. It helps a little bit better sometimes than just covering with your hands. But is there anything that you would tell us that we should, something specific get that out, something specific to go over with the kids when we do those programs?
I think that's great, and I think you're telling them to do the right thing. And one thing I always tell people is during a tornado warning, obviously lowest level, interior room, away from windows. But what I like to say is put as many walls between you and the outside as possible to kind of tell those kids, hey, because they might not know what exactly an interior room is. But if you say that, if there's this wall and this wall and this wall, you're going to be safer than if you were out on the room towards the edge of the building. So that's one thing I like to say to people, but I think you're doing the right thing.
My biggest thing that I've been trying to hit on and enjoy as well is every presentation we do, helmets. Whatever kind of helmet that you have, you need to have those ready when we have severe weather days.
Perfect item for your disaster kit. Yes. That is really, I mean, that's a lifesaver right there, having that helmet. That's good.
I go back to, I think it was it was either 4th or 5th grade. I was in a combination class that year, so I don't remember if I was in 4th or 5th. Anyway, we had a tornado warning at our school, and I remember getting to see the funnel cloud from the position where they put me in, for my safety spot. I was beside the window.
No!
I kid you not.
Excuse me? Who was doing this?
That's where they had us out in the hallway, and I was the first.
Right there.
Yeah, I was the first one out, so I was the guy. I was next to two double doors, and that each door had glass on each side of it.
No.
I literally
same thing.
I literally got to see the funnel cloud from where I was at. I watched it come right at the school, mind you.
What? I would have had a fit. How are these people allowing this to happen? You can see I'm getting very upset about this.
Cheryl, I'll explain a little bit from Hampton City School standpoint. Back in elementary school, all of our classrooms had big glass windows on the outside that went up from the floor to the ceiling. And so the next safest place they found was that hallway, which had double doors at each end.
Oh, my goodness.
And had middle doors halfway down the hallway, and then oftentimes had glass above the classroom doors. And so basically we were in a wind tunnel of glass.
Oh, my God.
But I was like, there was one safe place, and that was the school bathroom, which was made to hold about 5 kids at max if you shove them into there.
Pile in.
But
pile in.
I know.
Or a janitor's closet. I mean, there are other rooms. Oh, I hope that they've changed their ways.
That's something that I would love to see as a weather community in general, is really reach out to the school systems and a lot of these public places and kind of just say, hey, what we have right here, is not working. Let's try to work together to formulate something that's a little bit better. Because like Ricky was saying, the bathroom's a perfect place. I mean, who cares if there's 50 kids in a bathroom? That's the safer place than being out in the wind tunnel where you've got doors and glass and everything else. So as we venture on into the years to come, that's one thing that I really hope as the weather community we can do, is really reach out to the school systems and places of interest where a lot of people congregate at, and really show them the wrongs and the rights about being prepared for something. Because who's to say the next time a tornado hits the St. Louis airport or the next school that gets hit, you're not going to be affected by it. So that's a big thing that I hope we can all come together as one and really show the people, we need to come up with something better.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And the airports, I think, are doing the right thing. They have the signs that say designated tornado shelter, but we need to get these in all these different types of stores, grocery stores. If you're out shopping at the mall, are there signs? Are there signs in schools? I think every business needs to get one of those and have that plan.
Yeah, and me and Scotty have told every school that we deal with that they want us to come and help them work on their plan. We're available at any point. We'll gladly come do that. So anybody who's watching the show from our area, that offer definitely stands.
Come to our school. We need to
Yeah, we had the tornado drill a couple of weeks ago for the state of North Carolina. There's some schools that didn't even participate in it, so go
Oh,
figure.
Virginia has one of those too. It was just the other day, and the same thing. You should see. It should be mandated that every school participate. I just don't understand. People just don't put the same amount of value on personal safety. But
Because it goes back to what you were saying about the restaurant owner in Virginia Beach. It's not happened here, and it's not going to happen. And
that's right.
one thing that I heard in Oklahoma City a couple weeks ago at the summit was, who's to say the next big storm's not going to affect you? Prepare like it's going to. So.
Yep. That's right.
Well, we are on 9 o'clock, and I know you wanted to go get some dinner, and Ricky's got some things to do as well. So we're going to kind of wrap up. And Cheryl, again, thank you so much for coming on. I'll let you promote your social media outlets, how people can get in touch with you. Maybe a school system or a viewer here has watched the show and they want to get a little bit more information about a certain topic. So I would definitely let you give you the floor and let you talk about how people can get in touch with you.
Yeah, thank you. So my website is www.CherylNelsonVA.com, and also on Twitter, Cheryl Nelson WX for weather, and on Facebook it's the same thing, Facebook/Cheryl Nelson WX. So any of those ways you can contact me. I also MC events. I do speaking engagements. I'm a spokesperson, meteorologist, TV host. So anything anybody needs, just don't hesitate to contact me, and my email address, you will find that on my website as well, CherylNelsonVA.com.
And for those meteorologists who may have some openings?
Yes! There you go.
We do have several meteorologists throughout the Southeast that watch, so.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm looking to get back full-time, so if there's any openings within preparedness, television, I'm certainly on the search right now.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Cheryl.
Thank you.
I know we're going to be doing a getting ready for hurricane season show in the next month or two, so maybe we can have you back on and we can specifically talk about what we need to focus on for hurricanes.
Great. Thank you so much, and I really applaud all of you for doing this. I think it's incredible, and you're helping get the word out there, so thank you for all you do as well.
Well, we appreciate it, and thank you so much, and don't be a stranger. We'd love to have you back.
Okay. Thanks.
You're welcome. All right, and Ricky has got his screen up. I know he's got a big event coming up this weekend, so I'll let Ricky kind of talk about what's coming up in Charlotte.
Yes, my vice president, Rachel Cuccinata, said there, she's like, you're like glowing at how excited you are with this event. And I'm like, I am, but Charlotte Weatherfest is here this weekend. It's going to be from 1 to 5 p.m. in the McHenry building and the little quad outside McHenry on the campus of UNC Charlotte. Going to have parking in East X 1, 2, and I guess 3, 2. Basically, find a spot on campus, you can park there, but the designated parking spots are over in East X 1, 2, and 3. This event begins at 1 o'clock, ends at 5. Weather balloon launches at 4 o'clock on the front grass, and then we're going to have presentations throughout the day, anything from Weather 101 to tropical cyclones, severe weather, climate change, Mars weather, and then a Q&A session at 4:30. So the weather looks good for now, nothing threatening in terms of weather, so it would be ironic if weather canceled a weather event, but we're looking good for now. So come on out, free event, free parking, everything along those lines. And let's see, Brad Panos should be there, John Wendell should be there, I think Steve Udelson, Vicki Graff. We're going to have Lindsay Taperez, I believe is how you pronounce her last name, for WBTV, Matt Morano, Jeff Crum, a whole plethora of TV people there who will be out. So come on out, it'll be fun.
Yes, and I think it's going to be like almost 70 degrees, so a beautiful day to be out at UNC Charlotte. So
yep.
I know that several of us are going to be down there as well, so we're looking forward to it.
Also, Ricky, before we go, our frequent viewer, Lynn, she wanted to make sure I told you congratulations from her.
Oh, thank you.
She heard your announcement last week, but she wasn't watching live with us last week. But she wanted me to make sure I told you this week.
Thank you.
Oh, congratulations. That's
Thanks,
exciting.
Cheryl.
Yeah, Ricky, do you want to kind of share how your first experience went for a little bit?
Yeah, sure, but there's an interesting story. I don't know if I told you guys or not, but the way we set it up is, for people who don't know, I accepted a job at WCYB, which is a NBC and Fox affiliate in Bristol, Virginia. So I'm their new weekend morning meteorologist there, and the way we do our weather hits for main weather is we start at the weather center and then go to the green screen wall. Well, no one told me that you have to wait about 30 seconds or so in between that, and so they didn't flip the chroma key on before I was ready to go. So I walked from the weather center over to the chroma key, and I was like, where am I? And I was like, is it broken? Is it not working? Is it not flipped on yet? So then I just stepped off, stepped back on. But for most people, you didn't even notice that. But that was how my first hit went. And then they also didn't tell me that there was no countdown from when I start. So I'm just sitting there staring at the TV screen waiting for our animation to roll. I'm like, okay, well, I guess this is it now. So we don't have an IFB yet, Cheryl. So they're working on an IFB for me. Yeah.
No.
Apparently, a lot of stations don't use IFBs. We do. But they just hadn't got me the mold for it yet. So I submitted that, and then I'll be up there in 2 weeks on the 28th. So hopefully it's in by then.
You can get a generic one.
Yeah. They gave me the custom mold one, but if we had thought about it, I would have got one for last week. But what they did the second time was I just told someone, I was like, just wave me over when I'm good, and then everything will work. So.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yes.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. Joey, do you have a rant this week before we kind of close up shop?
No, I don't really have anything. We went off the other week about not being prepared. So that would have probably been a good one for this episode also. But just a quick reminder that we run tornado drills and tornado tests for a reason. Please take them seriously. Please act on them. Please act on them in your place of business, your school for sure, definitely. I don't know why any of you didn't do it. That was pretty much it. And the one thing I always say about being prepared is I tell people all the time that fear is rooted in a lack of preparedness. That's where your fear comes from. People who say, I'm so scared of a hurricane or I'm so scared a tornado is going to hit me, the reason why you're scared is because you're not prepared for it. If you had everything ready to go, if you had a place of shelter, if you knew where you were going to go, you had all the food and water, you wouldn't be as scared as you are, I promise you. So that's my only rant this week would just be remember to calm your own fears by being prepared for what's going to happen.
Very good. All right. Austin, anything to add before we sign off?
Nothing.
All right. He's good. Next week, we don't have a topic, so we may just talk a little bit about everything next week. And after that, we got a slim-packed April and a slim-packed May, so it might
You
be
better
good
learn
to-
something this weekend at Weatherfest. You can bring it in next week.
That's right. We'll recap Weatherfest. So next week, an open week, so those always could go any certain way. So we'll have to see how that goes. Then starting in April is Severe Weather Month. We got Brad Panovich and Damon Lane on April 1st, talking about severe weather. April the 8th, we have Rick Smith and Jared Geyer on. Rick Smith is the warning coordinator in Norman, Oklahoma. Jared Geyer is with the Storm Prediction Center, so they're going to be talking about the process of outlooks, watches, warnings, and how that goes. The next week, we're going to be talking about the Eastern North Carolina tornado outbreak with Wes Honstadt and with Gary Stevenson, both out of Raleigh. And then the Alabama tornado outbreak the next week on the 22nd with Mark Prater and Wes Wyatt, both out of Birmingham, Alabama. And then we follow that up with Gary England, and he's just going to talk a little bit about everything on the 29th of April. I hope those dates are right because I just remember that all from the top of my head. So just remember every Wednesday, and you're good with the dates. So we're looking forward to April. It's going to be a busy month, and it seems like we may have a little weather maybe to talk about with some of the rumblings in the weather world where the severe weather may have an uptick in April. So we'll have to see how that works out as well. Enough rambling. Let's sign off and let's get home. So thanks for watching, everyone. We will see you next Wednesday. We hope to see you out in Charlotte this weekend for Weatherfest, and definitely hit up Cheryl if you have any questions about preparedness. She has really spent a lot of time and focus and effort on that, so she has all the answers to help you and your family out. So have a great week, and we'll see you next Wednesday.
So